NASA's focus may now be on Mars, but it was 49 years ago this week that President John F. Kennedy pledged to put a man on the moon by the end of the 1960s. That announcement set off the space race, which was fueled in part by science fiction movies and pulp novels of that era. But it wasn't all kid stuff. Our next guest is the author of the new book, another science fiction advertising the space race from 1957 to 1962. And it includes nearly 200 images detailing the convergence of Madison Avenue advertising and America's earliest pushes into outer space. And joining us now is Megan Prelinger. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
So first of all, tell us about this book. Where did these ads come from, and who are they trying to influence?
They came from old industry trade magazines from the space race era of the late 1950s and early 60s. They were published by trade industry organizations seeking to recruit new people to work in the 5 years between 57 and 62. Over 500,000 people were recruited into industry to build the space program. It was a really exciting time, and old magazines.
That's incredible. I mean, we could use a project like that now with the economic times these days. Tell us about this first one. Let's take a look at this owl. Just a little bit of an ominous feel, but what was it trying to advertise?
Well, it was advertising radiation telemetry and the tracking of missiles and rockets and the new technologies to track journeys by technology thousands of miles. Now that rockets and missiles could go thousands and thousands of miles, there was just a huge development in tracking mechanisms. And advertisers used images of animals as well as people to kind of naturalize these ideas that our new technologies were going to fly for thousands of miles. Some of them were going to be used in espionage. I think that's what the owl is referring to in this image.
Oh, sort of peeking in.
Yeah, the peeking in of the spy satellites. This was at the dawn of the spy satellite era.
This next one reminds us of the Sistine Chapel, sort of has that same feel. What was Northrop trying to do here?
Well, it's a recruitment advertisement, and pulling all these people into industry. It was a time when advertisers sought to paint the biggest possible picture of our future in space and really reach for the broadest horizon of possibility. And in this imagery, they're actually quoting from the Sistine Chapel, nothing less than the hands of Adam and God reaching for one another in the Sistine Chapel. I think it's just a statement of how high the hopes were and dreams for the upcoming space age.
And it definitely panned out because of the getting on the moon. And when we got on the moon, we figured out that this next one...
Right. What is the moon made of?
What's the moon
made of? Is it made of cheese? Isn't it funny? It's a kind of a retro piece of Swiss cheese there in the advertisement. But really, people didn't know what the moon was going to be made of. There were all kinds of debates among scientists of whether we could really land a spacecraft there, because people thought the moon might be made of powder and the spacecraft might sink. That it was just a puff of powder up there. We didn't know.
And it wasn't cheese, so we couldn't eat it.
Nope.
And then this last one, Republic Aviation. Tell us about this one.
Well, this is a classic wheel-shaped space station. Until a real-world space station actually was designed in the 1970s, it was assumed that all of our space stations would be shaped like wheels, so we would get artificial gravity from them spinning.
Ah.
Yeah. So that's where you see the wheels. Turned out not to be practical, but we didn't know it then. The images are so interesting because they depict technologies that we just didn't know yet what they were going to look like. And it shows the space station being used as a base for lunar explorations and a little lunar base being built.
Sort of the early stages.
Yeah.
All right, Megan Prelinger, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
And if you enjoyed the book, it's another science fiction advertising the space race from 1957 to 1962, and there are hundreds more images inside. Thank you.
Thank you.